to another edition of the digital. Wow, I am
Daily.
daily. That's a hurdle I'm not ready for yet. Welcome to another edition of the digital download, which is
The
that.
longest
There we go.
running
Weekly
weekly
live.
business talk show on LinkedIn Live.
Oh, that was painful. Yes,
It's only taken me 18 months to learn that.
the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Today, we are talking about unlocking career success with special guest Mark Herschberg. Mark says success isn't just about technical skills, it's about the toolkit of career skills that can set you apart. He's going to share with us what he means by that and ways we can upskill ourselves. But before we bring Mark on, let's go around the set and introduce everyone. Tim, would you kick us off, please?
Yes, thank you. My name's Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Excellent. Thank you. Birthday boy,
Cool.
many happy returns of the day.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday, Alex.
Thank you. Yes, my name's Alex Abbott, the founder of Sapiro. And if you hadn't figured it out, it's my 50th birthday today. So my wife had kindly arranged my office this morning when I came downstairs and I saw this.
Excellent.
Probably
Well,
had to wear
happy
the
birthday.
crown all day, so here I am.
There you go. Thank you. Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I would like to say I'm glad that you've got all the numbers on there, Alice. I thought it was your 60th.
Too kind.
Ouch. And myself, I am Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results and a proud DLA Ignite partner. Today, as I mentioned, we have Mark Herschberg talking to us about career success and upskilling our skill set. For those of you tuning in, and those of you that have maybe a friend who is open to work, why don't you reach out to them, ping them, have them join us? We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience, and audience participation is highly encouraged.
Yeah.
So, with introductions done, let's bring on Mark. Mark, good morning and welcome. Please tell us a
morning,
little bit
Mark.
about yourself and what brings you here today.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Mark Herschberg. I've had a very interesting dual career because although my primary job has been building tech startups and I work as a CTO, a Chief Technology Officer, early in my career, I recognized that to get where I wanted to be, there were a number of skills I would need that no one taught me. Skills like leadership, communication, team building, networking, stuff we've all heard, stuff we've been told is important, but no one actually said, and here's how to do it. So I set out to develop these skills in myself. We didn't have shows like this that I could turn to back then. I realized these skills apply not just to the C-suite, but to everyone. So I started to upskill my entire team. And as I was doing so, MIT had gotten similar feedback. Companies were saying, we want to see these skills, not just in your students or people we hire from your school, but everyone we hire at all levels. And we can't find it either. So I got involved with a program at MIT referred to as MIT's Career Success Accelerator. And I've been teaching there for over 20 years, helping to teach these previously untaught skills to our students. And so I've had this parallel career building tech startups myself, but teaching at MIT and elsewhere, and then the book and speaking and everything that came out of that.
So, Mark, it's amazing to me that MIT recognized the need for these. Why do you believe these skills aren't regularly taught in schools, whether it's the high school level or college level or whatever the case may be?
There are historical reasons for this. High school is a relatively modern invention going back maybe about 150 years. Prior to that, we just sat on the farm and learned from our parents. But when we got to high school, all we really needed was basics, reading, writing, arithmetic. We just needed to know how to move off the farm into the factory and read the sign saying, "Do not touch spinning blade." We just needed basic skills. You didn't need to be a good networker to work on an assembly line. So those skills really weren't important. Now, if you look at the university level, that has a different history. That history goes back almost 1,000 years. And universities are run by professors. Wonderful people, very smart, but they are very deep and narrow. And so when you go off to university and you say, "I want to learn marketing," well, the marketing professors, the ones with the PhDs, have said, "Well, we are the experts, and we've decided if you want a marketing degree, you have to take these classes, some intro to marketing, some mid-level, one or two senior level classes. And if you do all that, plus the school wants you to take some general stuff, a science, math, a history, yeah, fine, do that too. But we, the marketing people who guard this field, have determined if you take all these classes, we'll give you a piece of paper that says, you know this much about marketing." We're not saying you're a good marketer. We're not saying you're a good employee. We're just saying you have this level of knowledge. And that was sufficient 70 some years ago. When you think about that kind of corporate 1950s view where we sat there like cogs in a machine, I always envision you've got the people at the desk, you've got the inbox and the outbox, and your boss comes in and says, "Do this." You say, "Yes, sir. I'm going to apply my marketing knowledge, stick in the outbox. What next, sir?" And that's all we had to do. Again, there wasn't that need for other skills. You just needed the mechanics. It wasn't until about 20, 30 years ago, as we deconstructed the traditional corporation, as we started laying off middle managers in the 80s and 90s and reformulated the teams, that we got these dynamic teams that we don't have the hierarchy. In fact, today, of course, you might have a 24-year-old who knows much more about some marketing than a 54-year-old CMO. Because he's going to say to her, "What's this TikTok thing? What do we do?" And it's no longer he knows everything and just says, "You do what I don't have time for." We all have to contribute, and it's changed the dynamics of how we interact in the office place. But unfortunately, the university system has not caught up to this new reality.
So what skills are you saying that we, if we've been through, if schools haven't changed and we're still turning out people like that, so what skills is it that we don't have?
I list 10 skills. Now, 10 is an arbitrary number because depending on who you ask, you can see anything from 5 to 50. That's just where you're kind of drawing the lines, bigger buckets, smaller buckets. So here are the 10 skills as I break them down. Career planning, how to have career goals and actually set out to achieve it. Because so many people just say, "Well, I hope to get a promotion," or "I hope to be here in a few years," but they have no planning or execution towards it. Then second one, working effectively. Now, this is a bucket of some meta skills, things like managing your manager, understanding corporate culture. It's not about the work, it's about the meta work in which we exist. Third is interviewing. Now, there's lots of support for how you interview as a candidate, but we rarely, if ever, teach people how to hire someone else. And yet so many of us are responsible for hiring our peers or subordinates with no training whatsoever. Then we have leadership and management skills. And I break that down to people management and process management. And then finally, I have a set of 4 skills in the end: communication, networking, negotiation, and ethics. And these skills, again, come from research we've done at MIT and elsewhere, where companies said, "This is what we're looking for," and we just can't find it.
So when it comes to something like leadership skills, how can I practice leadership skills if I'm not in a leadership role?
Great question.
Great question, Rob.
I know it is. I asked it.
I'm going to give you 2 answers. First, this is an exercise for the listeners to do later. I want you to think about leaders you admire and come up with a list of what are the skills that you would look for in that leader? What is it you admire? What is it you would like if you were emulating that person? What are all the attributes of a good leader? After you come up with that list, sit down and imagine you are now the leader and you have to pick people for your team to be your follower. What are the skills or attributes you would like to see in your followers? And what you're going to find, I'm going to give you the punchline now.
Go on, tell us.
Yeah, it's going to be the same. And so we can practice those skills as a follower. We can learn it even if we're not in that senior position. And most importantly, what people don't realize, leadership is not positional. We think of this in like the military. Well, you have a higher rank and therefore I follow and do what you say. But again, in the workplace, true leadership is influential. If you think about some of the greatest leaders of the 20th century, people like Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi, they were not authoritative figures. They did not have some elected office where they could command others. They had no power and yet got millions to follow them because they are true leaders. And so what companies want when they say we want leaders, they're not saying, well, we need more people in senior roles. They're saying we want people to stand up and say, here's an idea. I am going to champion this. And you can do that no matter what your title is.
Yeah, we had a CEO come on, Mark, recently, who I can't remember what he called it, where he was just he was expecting the people that work for him to come up with the ideas, and in fact, he was trying to create an environment and the culture where those people would do that.
And that's what most companies want.
Yeah. It's absolutely. It's certainly I think quite often we seem to have got into this situation where we assume that the people in hierarchy have all the answers, and we don't. In fact, we probably do, and they don't. And actually, what they want is this leadership is they want us to come forward and actually give them the answers.
In fact, I talk about this in the book and with my students. I often think of hierarchies as inverted. We normally look at hierarchy and we see this pyramid, we see the people at the top. So people at the top, they make the decisions, they make things run. But let's imagine if you take a company, for example, an automotive company, if you got rid of the bottom 3 layers of people, just got rid of all of them, said all we have are the mid and more senior layers, what happens to that company? They have a lot of meetings, they do a lot of paperwork, but nothing actually gets built. The people doing the work are gone. Company's going to shut down. If, on the other hand, you got rid of the top 3 layers and you kept everyone else, okay, they might not run quite as well. You might be missing some guidance there, but it will still operate. They can actually produce work. And in all of our companies, it's the people on the lower levels who do the actual work, who generate the value. Those of us more senior, our job is to provide support for the people who actually create the real value. And so I always like to think of org charts upside down, that those of us in the C-suite and in more leadership roles, we are underneath supporting the people doing the work. And that's how we have to look at organizations these days.
This is brilliantly refreshing. So normally what happens is that we have a guest on and they say something and then we all pile in and tear them to pieces. Well, we don't tear them to pieces. We have debates about it. And what's happened is the first 2 kind of statements that you've made, we've just sat here going, yeah, that's just brilliant. It's so obvious and so straightforward that your analogy about us viewing the pyramid up the other way, if you get rid of the top 3 levels, the machine continues to run. It may not run in the right direction, but it does at least still operate. And it's a beautiful way of viewing that. So how can, bearing that in mind, how can somebody use that to help them plot their own strategic journey and their own career development within these organizations?
Well, let's go back to the basics of career planning. And this is something no one does, almost no one. And I want you to take this in mind for yourself. And if you are any type of manager, you should be doing this for your team as well. Now, let's just think about our corporate jobs. Imagine your CEO came to you January 1st and said, here is a critical project. 50% of the company revenue depends on this project, and you are the person solely in charge of this. Get it done by the end of the year. Would you say, okay, sounds good. Let's put a meeting on the calendar December 31st. I'll show up in your office and cross your fingers. Let's hope I deliver. That would be insanity. No one would risk 50% of their company on, well, cross our fingers and let's see what happens in a year. Instead, you say, well, this is a project. We are going to create a project plan. We are going to have check-ins every week, every month. We're going to see how we do. We know whatever plan we come up with is going to change as it goes. We also know day one, I can't tell you what I'm doing every day of the year. I don't know what I'm doing October 16th as of January 1st. I'll figure it out when we get closer. And we're going to have some sense of, are we on target, off target, change the target as we get closer to December 31st. Now, that's normal for our jobs. But when it comes to our career, what do? We say, well, I hope to make director in 3 years. I hope to make VP in 7 years. All right, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope I get there. 100% of your income depends on this. You wouldn't do a 1-year project without a plan, and yet we let our careers just go forward and let's see if we make it. But we can apply some of the same techniques to our career planning. Say, well, here's where I want to be in 7 years. Where do I need to be in 5, in 3? We can start to backtrack. And what trips people up is they say, but I don't know what I'm doing in year 3. Well, you also don't know what you're doing in October in this year-long plan. You have some vague placeholder. Well, we should probably be putting the things together and starting maybe the QA on it. So you say, well, here's roughly where I need to be. If I need to be here in 7, I can't go right from where I am to a VP. I need to be a director sometime around year 4 or 5. And so we can backtrack. And just like with our project plans, we have a regular check-in. Say, hey, how are we doing? Do we need to course correct? Do we need to change? We can do that with our career. So something simple you can do right now is you can take your phone out. You're still going to pay attention to this, but you're going to take your phone out, open the calendar application, create an event that says, think about my career, and set that as a recurring event every 6 months. And now you've just created a regular check-in. That's the simplest thing you can do. And now you're not just crossing your fingers to see where you are 7 years from now. You're being a little more proactive in planning.
I get that, but I think that's potentially quite easy for us to visualize because we're all old. And but when you're young, if you're in your mid-20s, you've had, you're out of university, you've had 2 years in the workplace. The first year you were looking for the right job, so you were working as a barista and you decided that wasn't the career for you. And then you've had a year in your proper career job. Actually, the reality is you don't know anything at that age. I know I didn't. I knew nothing about, and it's interesting because the things that have become blindingly obvious to me as I've got older is that all of the skills that you need to be successful in life are really simple skills that we inherently have. And yet we tuck these away and we think that what's important is that I have to do this thing or go on that team building thing or do, and those are the predicators of success. And actually smiling and saying please and thank you and turning up on time and stuff like that is the key stuff. But when you're young, you don't know that. The only reason you know that is that you keep turning up late and not getting the business. And then you realize, maybe the two are not entirely disconnected. So how do young people not only learn these skills, because it's something, when you tell somebody who's young, honestly, it's as simple as this. You need to do these 5 things. They look at you as if you've come from another planet because they don't believe that the key to unlock it is so simple. So how do they learn those skills?
What young people should do, and really any of us should do when we're looking at further up on the ladder or lattice, if you've heard that model, is to talk to people further down the path. They don't even have to be further down your path. One of the mistakes we make is we teach people about careers in this very binary way. If you think back to when we were kids and Johnny's mom would come in and she was a doctor and she'd talk about being a doctor, and then the teacher would say, do you want to be a doctor? Yes or no? Oh, I want to help sick people, or no, I don't. Do you want to be an accountant? Yes or no? It's
No.
binary. And see, that's the answer. But in fact, when you look at jobs, now we all say, well, I know what a doctor does. Every 7-year-old understands what a doctor does. Well, actually, most people don't. We think, well, doctor takes care of sick people. Here in the US, if you're a doctor and you're in private practice, yes, you take care of sick people. You also do a heck of a lot of paperwork. There is a huge amount of paperwork, which every doctor I know hates. And there's dealing with all the insurance company issues. And if you run private practice, you have to hire staff. Oh, you have to go find clients. You have to come up with a budget and work with your accountant to figure out, are we making money or not? There's a whole bunch of other skills that we don't talk about. In fact, for some people, that's more of the work they do than actually taking care of the sick people. And so we need to break down any and every job we look at. And even again, for those of us who might be mid-career, say, well, if I want to get to this next level, tell me, what do you actually do? Because we might see our boss or so on the next level. Well, we see them, they run the meetings, they seem to make these decisions. But what we don't see is the paperwork or the solo work, or they're spending lots of time doing budgets or managing risk. And by understanding not just the role, be a doctor or not, but all the different components, we can do a few things. First, we can say, do I want to do all these things? Oh my God, there's 60% travel. I don't want to do that. That's not the role for me, even though it sounds cool, even though the headline of the role is great, the actual tasks are less fun. But then also, once we understand these tasks, we can say, wow, how do I do that task well? What skills do you wish you knew 5 years before you took this role? What makes someone successful or not successful? We can get guidance from someone further down the path than us.
Mark, when you say that, that reminds me, as you were talking about, well, you know, if we sit down and say 7 years from now, 5 years from now, I want to be a director. It's one thing for us to do career planning and think like that. But how many of us really just treat it as time in title? If I do this for 5 years, I will make it to the next level, where we don't think about the skills development. What does it take for me to get from here to that next level beyond simply time in title? How do we identify the skills, and then what do we do about working on them? Not all of us can go back to college.
Great question. And we don't need to go to college to do this. So when you're having these conversations, what you're finding out is, for this target role, here are the skills that you want to get. These are the, let's say, 7 skills. And so you break those down, and then you think, well, I'm over here and I've got these skills. So from here to here, there is a skills gap. I might have 4 of the 7 skills, and maybe I still need to improve in one of them. And then there's 3 other skills. So now I've got, from here to here, I have all this time to work on those skills. If I want to be here with all these skills in 3 years, how do I plan out those 3 years to develop the skills, to fill in the gap? Now, we can think, for example, mechanically, if you are a salesperson, you might say, well, I'm doing well in sales. I am adding new customers. I've got good numbers. But if I want to be a VP of sales, at some point, I have to demonstrate that I have opened new territories. That's very important for a VP. You can't just sell a lot. You have to open brand new territories. I've never done that. So how do I do that? Either I get into a role, maybe a director level role where I can do that. Maybe I move to another company that's a smaller company that's looking to expand, where I just say, yep, everyone's going to get some new territory. Or maybe I talk to my boss and say, you know what, maybe not this year, but next year, as part of my development, can you assign me a new territory that I can develop? So once we've identified the skills we have, the skills we need, and what that gap is, we want to create that plan. And it could be going back to school, getting a master's degree. It could be taking online classes, but it could also be through mentoring, through work and practice. There's many different ways to achieve certain skills, but having that proactive plan to do so.
And not just skills, I guess, Mark. It's, I think about, how, and I guess the more senior you get, the more important it becomes to have a strong network of people that know you and know your work, know what you're capable of doing. And so where do you see networking, whether that's internally or externally, as part of the career plan, or is that considered something separate?
No, it absolutely is. And I First, love that you bring up internal versus external networking. So many of us don't think about internal networks because we think, well, the network's how I find a job, and I have a job, so I don't need these people. But our networks deliver so much more than jobs. One thing that we've all come to accept is our cell phone as an extension of us. If you said, Mark, what's the fastest land mammal? I don't know, but I always have it with me. I'm going to pull out my phone and look it up, and in seconds, I have access to that knowledge. The phone is an extension of my brain with all this other knowledge. In fact, our network, also accessible through this device, our network is the same thing. What do I need to know about opening an office in Germany? I don't know, but there are people in my network who do, and I will call them up and say, I need help understanding this, and they will hopefully help me. So yes, it can get you jobs, but it can get you other things. It can get you customers, partners, suppliers. It can get you information, answers. I was brainstorming with a guy I had worked with about almost 10 years ago. I was just trying to think through some data science models. Said, hey, can I call you up? Can you just help me think through this? And great, he helped me out. He was an extension of my brain through my network. So that is a skill we want to develop. And even inside the company, our network helps us see other things that's going on within the company. And our network is also helpful if we have to deal with some corporate politics. So we should proactively develop our network. And we should even say, I need my network to be more extensive in certain areas, which, by the way, aren't limited to just your industry. Diversity in the network, certainly diversity of people. Here we are, all 5 middle-aged white guys, diversity of traditional characteristics, age and gender and race and everything else, but also diversity of industry is important because that can unlock new areas for you.
Yeah.
Is it worth picking up some of the comments, Rob?
Yes. Let's see.
If we start at the bottom and work upwards.
So we have from Lisa, Mark's a smart guy. I like his analytical approach. You have to look at the JD. I imagine she means job description and the systems and the
That's
people
what
that
JD
JD
means. Okay.
touches. Yes.
And-
She actually picks up on something interesting to me as well. Mark, you were talking about I'm at this level and I want to get to this level and the skills in between. And I would say job descriptions are pretty terrible at telling me the skills I need to get from where I am to where I want to be. There's so much that I have to infer, and every organization has it differently. So how can I, as somebody aspiring to the next level, identify those skills that I should be working on and should be putting attention toward?
Thank you, Leah, for the kind words. And you're right, job descriptions, I talk a lot about this. Our job descriptions are terrible. And this goes to, we've had interviewing training as candidates. How do I answer? What's your weakness? But we don't train people as hiring managers what to look for. And that begins with a job description. Usually what we have is a street lamp effect problem. If you haven't heard this term, the street lamp effect is this old joke. There's this man, this drunk guy who's staggering around the street. A police officer sees him and says, what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm trying to find my house keys. He says, okay, I'll try to help you out. So they're looking around the street. And after half an hour, they're not finding it. And the officer says, are you sure this is where you lost them? Because we're not seeing it. And drunk says, no, I lost them in the park. He says, well, if you lost them in the park, why are you searching here on the street? Drunk says, well, there aren't any street lamps in the park. It's all dark there. And so we look where it's easy to look. If you look at most job descriptions, oh, you need 7 years of experience with X. Very easy. Have you worked with X for 7 years? Yes or no? I can measure that. Do you know why? I can ask you, how do you do this? How do you manufacture these chemicals? And either you know how to do that or you don't. What we are not as good at is understanding, how are your leadership skills? How are you at team building? And so we, the job description creators, often don't even think about what this means. And then we don't think about measuring it. So you're absolutely right. And there are these hidden implied things that are just below the surface. They're almost unconscious in the mind of the interviewer, which makes it very hard for us as candidates because we have to understand what are they actually looking for, and then how do I sell myself into that. Now, even when it's explicit, I'll give you one of my big pet peeves. And I was guilty of this myself earlier in my career. I would write job descriptions that would say strong leadership skills, strong communication skills. We see this often. What the heck does that mean? What are strong communication skills? Does that mean you can get up on the TED stage in front of 10,000 people and deliver a fantastic world-class talk? Those are great communication skills, probably not what they're looking for. Does that mean you can write super succinct emails? Also a great communication skill, but maybe not what they're looking for. Does it mean you can communicate technical ideas in your domain to other people? Maybe it means that. It can mean lots of different things, but most people who write that don't even know what they mean. And so again, as a candidate, you have to figure out what they want and then sell yourself into it. So our job descriptions are terrible, unfortunately.
Have you seen Dan's comment, Dan Rockwell, there, saying to get to the next level, assume you are the level and now document it?
Yes. And then he follows up with the whole notion of a job is cast completely different in the face of AI. Now, we people, not to be experts, we have capacity. Do they have capacity to learn, to endure, to embrace, to bend, to agree, to challenge? Which actually leads me to another question I had listed. So we've mentioned networking and leadership skills. And why are networking and leadership skills crucial, especially in the age of AI and rapid technological change?
When you think about all the things that we want to do, and actually let's back up, let's talk about how AI is going to impact our jobs. Because I think most people tend to look at as, well, is my job at risk? And we know with a tool like AI, when you look back in history, we see time and again the creative destruction of new technology. We see how technology has put the milkman no longer exists. Elevator operators no longer exist. Farmhands do exist. There's just fewer of them. But the good news is there's fewer of them because we all would have been farmhands 200 years ago. And now we can do things like this. So we're going to lose jobs, but it's going to create new jobs because without technology, we would not all be here today. But all of us are saying right now, I don't want to be the person losing a job. And what it comes down to, it's again, don't look at in a binary way, break it down into those tasks and say, here's the 7, 12 tasks that I do at work, create that list. And next to each one, you want to do two things. First, how much value does this deliver to the customer? Now, customer might be the company's customer. It might be internal customers. It might be the people you support. But you can think about, well, I generate financial analysis. Okay, fantastic. You also probably schedule meetings. We all do that. Or you send a summary update of your project status. That's not generating a lot of end value, but it's something we need to do to just keep the machine going. So we all have this list of tasks, and some are higher value, lower value. And some of these are more likely to be automated by AI, some less. Scheduling meetings, hopefully one day my AI can talk to your AI and I don't have to worry about playing calendar Jenga. Or doing a quick summary, if I can say, I've looked at all your emails and tasks this week, here's the key points you probably want to send to your boss. Great, you just saved me some time. And that was lower value stuff. If you can do the higher value stuff, I need to find other new high value stuff to do. So recognize our jobs will be evolving. Usually it's not wholesale like the milkman, say I have a job or I don't. We're going to lose some of those things to automation. Make sure you focus on the higher value activities. And this goes to your question of leadership and networking, because those are two areas where AI is going to be much weaker than us. It is not going to know how to lead. It can help you in your leading. It can help you craft a vision or a message, but it can't itself encapsulate that vision, can't come up with it and say, this is what we need to do. Likewise, it won't know how to reach out to your network and give you guidance. Think about trying to find these people, but you're the one who built those relationships and can utilize those relationships.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, I hear you say that AI cannot build networking connections for me.
Absolutely not, because networking is about relationships. So many people think networking is collecting business cards or, oh, I've had all these people on LinkedIn. That's not networking. Saying someone you met once and add on LinkedIn is now in your network. That's like saying, I was at a bar last night. I met this girl. I got her phone number. She's my girlfriend. Right? That would be insane. You're laughing at me for saying that as you
Is she not my girlfriend?
Yeah, well, I get bad news for you. Not quite there. You're like, well, that was step one. Now you have to build the relationship. Now you have to take her out on dates. So I met you once, I got your card, I add you on LinkedIn, but now I have to build that relationship. That's just not dating, but it's that human connection over time. AI can't. Now it can maybe make it easier. How do I send an email saying, great meeting you? How do I make it sound nice? AI can help. But it's that relationship we have. That is what networking is all about.
So let's see.
I understand that people have been using ChatGPT and AI to create dating profiles, etc.
I've heard that as well. I can also tell you I get a lot of a lot of sales spam, which is clearly AI generated from the salespeople, but those are not relationships. Those are attempts at transactions.
So this week I actually did it the other way around. I put the spam emails into ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT to basically write a sarcastic but polite email to let the person down. And I sent a few of those out. It was good fun.
I hope you share that online because
I shared it when I did it. It's on my LinkedIn profile.
Fantastic.
Nice. So Mark, another serious question for you now. So in the era of sort of co-creation and the need for individuals to collaborate and co-create things by, sharing their minds, as you mentioned earlier, where do you see that playing a part in one's career success?
That is becoming a more and more important part of our careers. It goes back to what we said earlier. The 1950s model of work was we sat there as cogs in the machine. And so we just did what we were told, and our boss generally knew more than we did. But if you look at the modern systems, I gave the example earlier, the 24-year-old who knows more than the 54-year-old about social media, the 54-year-old can't even envision what can we do with this? How can we use this to move forward our mission or even to come up with a new strategy? And so we have to collaborate, particularly across departments, across people, to synthesize new opportunities. And so this means that engagement with others and that communication and teamwork is becoming so much more important in our jobs because that's where we're going to unlock value. The mechanical, I'm just going to turn as a cog in the machine, that's the stuff more likely to get automated away by AI or other tools. So you're spot on with the importance of those skills.
And I feel like leaders, the older generation, let's say for now, will want to adapt and support that collaboration and co-creation with the younger generation. But when I think about Gen Zs and the percentage of the workforce that will be Gen Z in just a few years' time, I kind of assume, and it's never a good thing, but that they won't feel the same way. They'll know better. They'll want to do it their way. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's so much they want to do it their way any more than all of us when we were young. At 23, you think you know everything. Well, my way's better, and I just learned this, and you're out of date. And I think all generations, including Gen X and probably some of the other millennials certainly all think they know better. So I don't think Gen Z is unique in that experience. Where I do think they are different, and what I'm hearing from my peers, other companies, from what I'm seeing with my students and others, is particularly the last few years, younger millennials and Gen Z all got disrupted in their social maturity as we all sat home, especially Gen Z during some crucial years in high school and college and just out of college. They lost a lot of time just learning socialization skills. Now, it might be in high school, basic socialization skills. It might be socialization in the workplace if they were just out of school when COVID hit. But there's been a lot of, I think the term I want to use is one we're not supposed to use anymore. Just a lot of backslide in terms of development of those skills. And I think we need to help move them forward. Something I encourage companies to do these days, a lot of companies are doing hybrid workplaces, some days in the office, some days remote. And what I encourage companies to do is something counterintuitive. The days at home, that's the days where you really want to focus on getting work done. I'm going to actually create the report. Remember, put the TPS cover on it. I'm going to write the code, whatever it is you do. But when we are in the office, in fact, there we want to emphasize more some of the socialization. We want those water cooler conversations. We want people to say, look, I know you're only in the office for 2 days this week, but take some of that time to go get coffee with a coworker. Now, managers hate this. Managers want people in the office because if you're a manager, it's harder to see what's going on when you're all remote. As a manager, I can kind of see, I can look around the office, see who's working, who's collaborating. I can see, are people stressed? Are people happy? How things are going? Harder to do that over Zoom. So managers like people in the office because they can see and watch. But in fact, we want people to be less focused on getting the kind of mechanical work done and to really emphasize that socialization. I'm not saying 3 days of parties, but do take that extra time to socialize because that's what we can't do at home. And this feels counterintuitive, but in the long run, this is what we need, the younger generations in particular, to really develop those skills, those internal networks and relationships, and just grow as people.
So do you represent the organization or the individual when you're working with them?
Yes. And there's not much of a difference because if you look, for example, here in the US, we've got the auto workers on strike. You say, well, it's the workers versus the company. But right now, nothing's getting done because they're not working together. But I will say my work, I'm typically a fractional CTO, CPO, fractional chief technology officer, chief product officer. So I'm an executive building things. I build tech companies. This work, everything we've been talking about here, I do not do consulting or coaching in this area. And that's because one, I'm busy with this. Two, I'd only help a handful of people. So I just give away stuff for free. There's a whole bunch of free downloads on my website. Take it. If you have a question, call me. But I don't want to be hired to help you because then I'm not helping a larger set of people.
Yeah. So what advice would you give someone that is looking to improve their career? So, there might be a structure in place for one to progress through, through the runs on the ladder that the company has created, and that may not align with the individual. So what advice would you give to the individual that may be able to challenge the company to ensure that he or she gets what they want from their career with the company?
It's actually the company who I think needs to change in this case.
Okay.
I have an article entitled, "Let's Face It, This Career Isn't Going to Last Forever." And most of us know, and our bosses know, we're not going to be here 20 years from now. Oh, don't talk about it. We can't admit someone might leave the company because that might start a panic and others might leave. Here's the reality. We're not going to be there. Your boss isn't going to be there in 20 years, probably. So let's have a conversation during our annual review or semi-annual or whenever you do it and create an environment. The company needs to create an environment in which you, the employee, can say, here's where I want to be in 5 years, in 10 years. And it might not be here. And everyone says, that's okay. We're going to help you develop and learn. And if at some point that's going to take you somewhere else, let's have a conversation about it. I actually tell everyone I hire, and when I join a team, everyone who works for me, I tell them a story about my father. My father was a doctor who worked in a hospital. And in his first job, he said to his boss, listen, I am going to look for a new job. I want to let you know so you can start to hire a replacement because I don't want you to be short-staffed. That makes it more difficult for you, the other doctors. It can put the patients at risk. So let's plan a transition. And his boss said, well, you can start looking today. You're fired. Now, my father made his boss's job easier. My dad was going to leave, but was going to do so. And so, like, if you need me to stay a little longer, I'll work out a start date with the other company. But his boss took it badly. And so I tell all my employees, if you're unhappy and want to leave, first, I hope you'll come to me. We can talk about it. Maybe I can address it. But if for whatever reason you have to leave, I had one person, for example, he said, listen, my wife just got into law school. In 6 months, we're moving across the country. And this is before remote work was really common. I said, okay, great. No penalty. He wasn't fired. I still sent him to a conference, which I was planning to do. I was going to say, oh, well, now I'm not going to invest in you. Because if I did that, no one would trust me again. But that made my job easier. And it builds trust. It tells your employees you care about them. And that's what we want in today's workplace.
But Mark, turnover is a cost. We're taught that all of business principles, recruiting and lost productivity and so on and so forth. Why would we ever consider facilitating additional turnover?
For the same reason, sometimes we want to fire customers. Now, we talk about with customers, you look at who's generating value, who's generating cost. People sometimes talk about the 80-20 rule. You've got these great customers and they're creating lots of revenue, lots of margins for you. And then you've got these customers where they're on the phone with you every other day, complaining about every little thing. And you're thinking, they're generating this much revenue and this much pain. Do I even want this customer? They are not worth it for me. So I'm fine firing that customer. If you have an employee who is not going to be happy, not going to be engaged, you're going to get less productivity. Their attitude might deteriorate. That could infect other people. I'd say it's best for everyone to help you move on. And again, here, if you do that in a way, I had one person I had to let go. It's a company about 10 years ago. I had to let him go. It was a values issue. He just didn't align to the company's values. But instead of just saying, get out, I recognized it was a values issue. He was a good person. He was a good employee, just didn't align. He was a perfectionist in a business where we didn't need perfection. I said, look, this is not the right fit for you. You need to move on, but I'm not firing you. Let's give you 4 months to find something new. I will write a recommendation. I will refer you to other people. And I sincerely believe he is a great employee for other companies. And so I helped him find a new job. And when I heard from someone else at the company, I said, that is the nicest way I've ever seen someone fired. That was incredible how you supported him. And my other employees saw, I will support you. And that creates more value. That mitigates the temporary pain of I'm losing someone by having a team that says, wow, what a great environment we're in. So you're right, there is some pain, but there's a lot of benefit as well.
Yeah, I like that. And I love Yayan's comment there, Rob.
I'll bring that up.
Yeah. I'll give you the wings. Don't be afraid to fly. I'd love to know if you did fly, Yayan, but I have no doubt that you did, because a boss that says that to you must recognize the potential in the individual.
And we as managers all have a responsibility to the people we manage to help develop them, even if at times it takes them away from us.
Mark, I mean, I just want to take that on a little bit further in terms of using words like mentorship, sponsorship, being an ally of people. How do you what do you think about that as leaders? You know, should we be mentoring? Should we be sponsoring? Should we be allies to people?
100%. And let me give you a specific concrete way to do this. And this is one of the free resources I just give away. I'm not selling a program. It's please take it. When you think about these skills, learning these skills, it's a bit like learning a sport. I can teach you the rules of football in 30 minutes, but it's going to take you a lifetime to learn how to play. It's not just knowing the rules, it's practicing, it's doing. And that's true with these skills. There is no, here's the 3 rules and now you're a leader, or do this and you magically communicate. There's a whole bunch of rules, but we have to practice and try. Now, it's tricky. If you think about people who play football, they are spending many more hours off the field practicing. We only see them on the field for a couple hours a week, but the real work happens off the field. We don't generally have breaks at work. We can't say, hey, I'm going to try leading in a new way. And then a day into it, when it's a disaster and my team says, this is nuts and I don't get it, I can't go, yeah, timeout, do over, doesn't count. There's no timeouts. But what we can do is we can create a practice arena. So I recommend to everyone, the best way to learn these skills is to create peer learning groups. I recommend groups of about 6 to 8 people in size, but there are ways to make it bigger. And you get together, you want people from different departments, not all salespeople together, all finance people together, different departments, but similar levels, because you don't want very senior and junior people together. And if you're at a small company or you're an individual, go use a tool like Meetup and go find other people. You don't all have to be at the same company. So you get together and then get some content. And you can use a book if you want, mine or others, but you don't have to buy a book. You can use articles, you can use podcasts, you can use a great show like this one. You just say everyone's going to read these pages or listen to an episode like this, and then we're going to come together and discuss. Because it's in that discussion, as we talk about leadership, for example, you share what you got. I think, oh, that's a different perspective. I never thought of it that way. Someone else will say, you know, I tried this years ago, and here's what worked for me, and here's what didn't. And that's almost like the scrimmage. I can hear how things are going, or I can say, hey, I'm thinking of trying this. What do you think? And get feedback. And that's our practice. And so you can create these groups. They are free. There's no cost. But when you create these groups, you get 4 incredible values. First, you're creating engagement with your employees. You're saying, I care about you. I'm upskilling you. Second, you get that upskilling. You get improved, better employees. Third, you are fostering those internal networks, because I am meeting people from different departments. I'm getting to know them and building relationships. And finally, I am creating a common language. If the book you're using is Good to Great, for example, then after we've all read it, I can say hedgehog model, and everyone says, oh, I know exactly what you mean. So you get all those 4 things just by creating this peer learning group. And you can do it. You don't need any big structure or cost to do it, but it's going to help you and other people on your team move forward.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, amazing.
So, Mark, we're actually coming towards the top of the hour. You've alluded to some of the resources. How can people get in touch with you?
I'm going to give you 2 websites. The first is thecareertoolkitbook.com. And that has information on my book, what's in it, where to buy it, Amazon, elsewhere, electronic or physical. But there's a whole bunch of additional resources on that website. There are articles like the ones I've mentioned under the blog. I put out new ones every week. And then there's the resources page with a bunch of free downloads. I don't even ask for your email because I've got nothing to sell you. The very first download is how to develop this guide. And by the way, the copyright's open, so you can take my name off. You can put your name there and say, hey, boss, I have a great idea. Here's the write-up. Take the credit. I don't care. I want you to learn more than I want to get credit or sell you anything. So the resources page and everything else is at thecareertoolkitbook.com. Now, there's a second website. I have a free app, because where we read information isn't where we need information. Some of the ideas you've learned here, what are the chances that you're going to remember it next week? What are the chances when you read a book like mine, you're going to remember it 2 months from now? You read the networking tips, but at that conference, you're saying, what were they? So the Brain Bump app is free from Apple and Android. And you can go to the website brainbumpapp.com, and that will take you to the stores, or you can search directly. It is a free app. It's as if you went through my book with a highlighter, but not just my book, other books, blogs, podcasts, classes, talks. We have an ever-growing set of content. We're like a streaming service, but it's text. And all the tips are organized by topic. So you can quickly find what you need. For example, as you're walking into that conference, you pull out your phone, you open the app, and you tap networking, and there are all the networking tips right as you need it. Or if you're trying to be a better manager, you can set up a daily reminder, 9 a.m. each day. As you go into work, you might want a management tip. You don't have to open the app. It just pops up. You look and say, oh, right, great, swipe, done. 2 seconds a day will help you retain the things you learn. So this is all free. Everything is free at the Brain Bump app, and you can find it at brainbumpapp.com.
One more time, those two websites, please. brainbumpapp.com and
marketing book.
Brainbump
toolkitbook.com.
the careertoolkitbook.com.
Excellent. And as far as connecting with you, how would people do that?
On those sites, particularly on the careertoolkitbook.com, there is a contact form. There's also on the contact page, you can see links to all my social media. I pay less attention to social media. Email's really the best way to reach me. So you can fill out the form. You can find my email on that page. And I hope to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your feedback. If you like something, didn't like something, if you have more questions, please do share your feedback.
Fantastic.
Rob,
Yes,
over to you.
over to me. So, Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This has been the digital download. What is that again? Oh, forget it. The longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. If you have something to say, if you would like to appear as a guest, we would love to hear from you. You can go to digitaldownload.live and fill out the Be Our Guest form. There's a QR code on screen right now linking directly to that. For our guest, Mark, to our audience, we've had, I'm going to try it each and every time. Yayan, close enough. Lance, Andrew, we've had Dan and Leah and numerous others commenting. Thank you for being an active part of the show today. And to our panelists, of course, thank you very much. Mark, it has been great having you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Excellent.